Hi, my name is Brady Wood, and welcome to another episode of McMaster Perspectives. And we're subtitling this one "Not Quite Evidence-Based." So, Roman, I suppose you and I should introduce ourselves and talk about how we landed here, and then we'll go into the topic, which is taurine and its relationship to aging. And so, Roman, I just kick it off by saying I'm a member of the department, but I'm a non-clinician advisor, and you and I have been working together on the textbook. And this topic of things coming up in the popular media was something we were talking about. So we see articles all the time, like maybe another episode will be this, but taping your mouth shut while sleeping yields better outcomes for cognitive function and health. And another one of these, we see things like this all the time in the news. Another one of these was this issue of taurine and how it relates to aging based on a study that was in Science, so a very reputable journal. So it's sort of I think there's a great opportunity for McMaster launching from its history as the home of evidence-based medicine to commenting on these articles that are almost kind of reported to the general public as fact. But anything you wanted to say on that, Roman?
Well, I like the idea of taping the mouth when sleeping. For some of us, maybe the good idea would be to tape the mouth when not sleeping, and that may avoid a lot of trouble to a lot of people. For introduction, Roman Jaeschke, I'm the physician, critical care physician, and working in the Department of Medicine and Department of, used to be called Clinical Epidemiology and Biostatistics, now Health Research Method Evaluation and Impact. And I'm involved in the movement, call it, of evidence-based medicine for last 2 or 3 decades. And now we are talking about not yet quite evidence-based interventions. So I'm clearly curious about some of them, and you had an idea of discussing them in public. What was your take when you've seen this Taurine article or Taurine article?
Well, Roman, I guess for me it was sort of interesting because I'm aware of like energy drinks, for example, and I'm also someone who is kind of carefully watching news on anti-aging and health and male hormones. So, for example, I've been watching. There's a tech entrepreneur who's now running experiments, and they're well documented on YouTube. They're calling it the Blueprint Protocol. His name's Brian Johnson, and he's trying to reverse aging, and he's doing everything from red light therapy to PPL and taking hundreds of supplements every morning and starving himself. And he looks somewhat impressive as a physical specimen now, but I wonder how much of what he's doing is evidence-based. And then so to read this taurine finding that just appeared, I don't know if it was in the New York Times or something, where I just saw taurine as a driver of aging, and then finding out it was a Science article, I was curious. And there are energy drinks. We probably shouldn't name them, but many of the energy drinks have this supplement in them, and that seems to almost have been prophetic on their part. Why it was included, I'm not sure, but it was advertised, and so a lot of frat boys and people that are staying up late and people who want to exercise harder, myself included. I was sort of already on this rhythm of having a sugar-free energy drink around 3 o'clock every day. And so now I feel like I'm doing something great for myself. But again, I didn't necessarily trust the reporting. But then to see that it was in Science, I mean, that's how we got started. I wanted to ask you, Roman, is this really evidence-based? Like, should I be taking this as fact and change my behaviors?
Well, two comments on it. Number one, everything is evidence-based, depending on how reliable this evidence is and how much you can trust it, how confident you are that a given piece of evidence presents the truth, so to speak. Because interestingly, the concept of evidence is very difficult to translate into non-English languages. The origin of the word comes probably from the legal proceedings where people presented pieces of facts, either for or against specific thoughts. Whereas in a lot of other languages, the evidence is perceived as by itself representing the truth. So if something is based on evidence, it has to be correct, whereas in our language, the evidence may be very reliable or shaky, very true and believable, or something what can be misleading. So the issue is not if there is evidence and whether something is the evidence based, but how reliable this piece of evidence is. So that's my first comment on what you were saying. The other one is you mentioned reputability of the source. And we are aware of many experiments run in the past where certain pieces of evidence, so to speak, were presented in different sources, as coming from different sources, either from reputable university versus university nobody heard about, and the same pieces of information presented as published in a reputable journal versus another journal where nobody believed in. Or nobody heard about. And the perception of believability was always much in favor of reputation. So it's not only evidence which convinces people, but not infrequently it's where it is coming from. Nevertheless, when I've seen this evidence in science, I was intrigued and I looked into it in more details. You looked at it as well. So even though you're conducting an interview with me, did it change your behavior at all, what you read in this paper?
Well, I mean, maybe it's worth saying too, like I wasn't really aware of what taurine was, and I'm not actually sure that I know what it is anyway. So even after reading the paper.
I was
it
doing
sounds like the paper says it's abundant. It's an abundant amino acid in humans and other creatures.
right.
And basically the conclusion of the article said that, you know, it declines as you age. And when they supplemented this in, I think it was like worms, mice, and monkeys, it had some effect on age and health and lifespan, like
Right.
a fairly significant outcome actually from the what I remember from the article. So
well, you know, I have to say that I was surprised, frankly, by the scope of the work being done there, because it looks like they looked at so many very sophisticated measurements in a lot of areas which I will not even quote because they are characterized by very difficult names and labels. But they looked into genetics, they looked at products of metabolism and products which are reflections of aging. But they also looked at things like longevity, which is hard to dispute because almost everything, every measurement which is not relevant to direct well-being of a person could be questioned. And what I'm saying here is that I do not care much what taurine does to worms or to fungi, or even to mice, because what certain substances do to mice, they may do something opposite to humans. However, the amount of the observations which they made in numerous laboratories around the world, in fact, the names range from France to United States to India. It was obviously major collaborative effort. It was very time and effort consuming because I learned that the average lifespan of mice, for example, is 24 to 36 months. So they had to feed those and keep those hundreds of animals in a good conditions for a number of years to see if those which are fed taurine will survive longer. When I looked at it from the perspective of assessing drugs, assessing medications, and when we look at believability of certain findings, we looked at number of categories. The first category is whether we can consistently reproduce certain findings, whether they point in one direction, and it appears to be fulfilled. The other one is, are they precise? Because if you see that in one group, say, 1 person dies out of 100, and in the other group, 2 out of 100 dies, the difference is huge. The difference is 50%, 1 versus 2. On the other hand, it could clearly be a play of chance. So you are looking at something called precision. And their findings were respectively precise in terms of differences in longevity. For example, it appeared that mice which was fed with taurine lived 10% longer, or 2 to 3 months longer than the mouse which was not fed with it. The two, however, major issues which make me a little bit more shaky in conclusions is, number one, was it a true experiment? And for true experiment, one would require something what we call randomization, which is a procedure where, in this particular case, some monkeys will be fed with taurine, some will be fed with some other substance which has no influence on longevity. But which monkey will get the taurine and which will not should be determined by chance. I'm not sure if that happens. So theoretically, especially if somebody was trying to prove the point which they had a priori, you could choose some mice which looked better than the other ones or healthier and fed them with taurine and end up with the mouse living longer. We call it risk of bias or risk of preconceived ideas influencing your outcome. And looking at what they presented, I still had difficulties saying, yeah, it's proven, it's foolproof against bias. But the biggest one is the issue of what we call directness. We're talking, should human beings take the taurine? Should we be taking taurine? Versus a situation where they experimented with taurine in unicellular organisms, in worms, in mice, and in monkeys. The closer you are genetically and evolutionally to human beings, the more you could trust the data obtained of those species. Do we have enough of them? For the sake of saving time, I would say that as a physician and as an epidemiologist, I do not believe I'm ready to say, hey, this substance should be put in water like fluoride, or supplemented like vitamin D in cereals. And we should not make a public policy on this basis. On the other hand, the personal decisions of people may be quite different, and if you're interested in it, I can present it to you as well.
And now that said, Roman, what other things? I mean, I'm sure none of us are comfortable like recommending it, but I would personally be being dishonest if I didn't say there's still something quite compelling in this, and I'm probably going to enjoy my energy drink a little bit more.
Well, remember that I actually didn't find yet the reason why taurine is in the energy drinks.
Let me check right now. I mean, I don't like to Google while we're on a podcast.
It is. Maybe we'll make a second part of it. Maybe we'll contact energy drinks producers and ask why they put it in it. My suspicion is it is a matter of taste. It's an amino acid, but it's not, interestingly, it's not an amino acid which is part of our proteins. It's called non-essential amino acid. It lacks some groups and it has sulfur groups, for example. But again, why they put in it is a little bit enigma to me at this moment. So we'll find out. We'll try to find the evidence. But I also tell you that my first thing here was, and maybe I will ask you, why would you not take taurine on the basis of what you read? Is there something missing in the information which science article provide?
Why would I not take it based on,
Right.
so, and again, I don't think the article is necessarily saying it isn't saying start
Mhm.
taking, it just says that the taurine deficiency is related to aging, and
Right.
supplementing it seemed to increase health and lifespan in
Right.
these models. So, but why wouldn't I based on it? I mean, for the same reason that I am skeptical of any of these articles, including the mouth taping one or other articles
Right.
that I think would be good fodder if we made this not quite evidence-based or recurring thing. I would
Well,
say,
from the perspective of epidemiologist again and a physician, this article concentrates on all the good things, but there is always and almost to everything a different side, a second side, which are harms. So I did spend some time looking for harms. You know, maybe maybe your hair will fall out, whatever is left,
well,
or
that would
something
be,
else.
that would not be good. Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
not be good. Although, well, you know, it's not good, but it's not a
Roman,
complete
actually,
tragedy.
I think we're both, well,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know about you, but I'm,
but you know, so I spent some time looking for toxicity, and I couldn't find it. And it's natural substance abundant in nature, so I do not believe there is a major danger of toxicity. But obviously, it would need to be studied. They were giving those animals 1 gram per kilogram of the body weight of mice, mind you. So the average supplement is between 500 and a gram. And frankly, this is close to what we take of it anyway. So the probability of toxicity is low. And the other issue which can stop us from it is cost. You know, I mean, it's, and I will explain how I know it. It's rather inexpensive. A capsule costs probably about 10 cents. So, but if the cost was $10 per capsule, you probably would be much more reluctant, wouldn't you?
yes.
All right.
And your energy drinks, well, maybe they will go up based on in cost based on this. But
Well,
Roman, I am reading here that there is a couple of things. So I read something on the Mayo Clinic here that taurine increases energy levels in cells. So that might be one part of the
and then
energy.
you explode.
But then the other thing that I read here is that, and I'll send this article too. It's from a website called Delish, but it says taurine suppresses the neurotransmitter receptors, which can help cause a calming effect. So it may be a physician here in this article is speculating the taurine's included in energy drinks to counterbalance the jitters of caffeine.
Well, you know, if you want to counterbalance something what you take to generate this effect, I wonder about the wisdom of it. But nevertheless, this is all what I would say still is in indirectness. I'm really not interested in these parts. If it's calming, that's okay, but the questions would be to what degree it calms you. If it blocks neurotransmitters, I'd rather know which one. But in the end, I'm really not interested in all those biochemical, genetic, enzymatic changes. I'm interested, how does it make me feel? And is it going in the same positive direction as longevity and energy and health and so forth? And those data are still lacking to a point of suggesting or recommending it to somebody else. On the other hand, I wonder if you will ask me how I know that taurine costs about 10 cents per pill.
Please tell me.
Oh, if you insist, I will tell you that I showed this article to somebody very close to me, and that person ordered it on Amazon the same days, and I got it in my household now for a few weeks. What it teaches me again is the main premise of evidence-based medicine, which is that the evidence does not make decision for you. It's people who make decision. So we look at the evidence, whatever the facts for or against something are, and we judge it, and we make personal decisions, which sometimes are rational, I would hope, and sometimes are less rational. But as much as to disclose, as much as I'm a physician, are not able or willing to recommend it to others, some of the people in my family and immediate closeness decided to take it, and here you go, before any definitive trials.
So Roman, I guess through that lens of evidence-based, let me ask you if my summary is correct, or if you would summarize this differently. It sounds like we've got an article here that says some promising things about taurine in terms of health benefits and extending lifespan, not in any humans and not in a kind of true experiment sense of having some of the animals that didn't have it and some that did. So ultimately, we would say this is, in terms of decision making, not quite evidence-based. If one was to say one should start taking taurine.
Right. I think your summary is correct. And the question from the personal point of view, people may make decisions as they wish at this stage, probably at not too high risk. On a population level, epidemiological level, societal level, we are not ready. And the next step in the spirit of evidence-based medicine would be at least few years of large-scale experiment when some people will get the taurine supplement and some will get identically looking pills containing substance which is not active, called placebo. That people who will get it versus not get it will be determined by chance, we call it randomization, which would be followed for a period of time. And from what I see, certain things like energy level, awakeness level, concentration, we probably could measure within weeks. But some other things, including some diseases, obesity, lipids, heart conditions, we would need months to years. And some people, like longevity, we would need years to follow. So complex thing. Frankly, I wouldn't mind to propose such study, because the data so far, also indirect, are quite intriguing, to say the least.
Thanks, Roman. So I guess what we'll do, I don't know how this will get circulated, but we'll make links to the articles about this available some way as well, or at least just point to where they are. But
right. Again, looking at it from epidemiological perspective, or more scientific perspective, or EBM perspective, making links to specific article is one of the frequent problems. We should summarize the evidence. We should look for all available evidence, and on that basis, link people to it. Because if we link them to 2 positive articles, forgetting 10 negatives, well, that generates its own trouble.
Good point. Good point.
All right.
Roman, I like that we're in kind of uncharted territory. This is like the cryptozoology of evidence-based medicine. We're talking about Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and other unproven things of which there are apparitions. So let's keep going.
Okay, thank you very much for this interesting for me talk.